We've all had moments where we'd like to give advice to ourselves, but a few years earlier, and I read a great article about the 10 tips that you can give young people. And so we're going to be joined by the author of that particular article. Enoch Omololu is the founder and CEO of Enoch Media, as well as founder of SavvyNewCanadians.com. And he's going to join us right after this break. Enoch, a real pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me on, Pat. Nice to be here.
Enoch, okay, I do want to get to the tips that you're going to give to younger people, and that's an important part of the discussion. But SavvyNewCanadians.com, why did you found it? Was there something that happened to you that stimulated that?
Yeah, so in 2016, when I founded Savvy New Canadians, my approach then was to document my understanding of Canadian personal finances for myself. And then over time, that sort of segued into me using it as a resource point for my friends who saw me as the finance guy. So if they had a question, they came to me for answers. And instead of repeating myself over and over, I just send them to the blog. Oh, you can find this specific topic here. And then 1 year in, I started seeing traffic from pretty much all Canadians. So it was getting traffic from all over the provinces. And I decided maybe other people are interested in this same information. Let me continue writing and promoting it, which is what has led to what the site is as of today.
Okay, and that need continues to expand, I take it, because I was just talking to somebody the other day that says that there's no place to get financial information. Is that what you're finding?
I think that there are places. The issue is finding information that you can easily digest. So people are looking for ideas that have been broken down into exactly what they need. They can find this same information perhaps on the government's website, but then it's clouded and packaged in all these legalese that most people are not interested in all that detail. They just want the call list notes. So they want the list that they can work with and start running right away. And I find if you have that resource that they can access and easily digest, then you do have an audience here.
Okay, so let's talk about that article. I read it, I think, in Forbes magazine, the 10 essential money tips for young adults. Let's just walk through those, starting off with what you thought was important, learning to budget. And I got to tell you, I am not good at doing a budget, never mind when I was younger.
Yeah, I think a good starting point for young adults is really starting to understand how the cash flow works. So what's my income? What are my expenses? How do I get these two uh, how do I get these two to cooperate with each other so that at the end of the month, I still have something left for savings? And a good way to do that is to start budgeting actively. So mindfully budgeting, looking at your income and your expenses. And then once you compare both, you know exactly how your money is coming in, how it is going out. Maybe there are spots that you can cut off some expenses or shave them down. Maybe there are some areas that you can that you actually need to add on some additional funds to help yourself. And then of course, see if there are ways to pull out a bit of money to put in your savings account, in your investment accounts, and all of that starts with budgeting. Like you really need to look at the finances, your cash flows, and understand how your money is working for you.
Do you recommend software programs and things like Quicken that easily go into your bank and tell you how much you're spending on things as a way to track that, or are there simpler ways to do it?
A good starting point, if you don't have access to a tool, is just to use a spreadsheet, or even just a paper where you can just itemize expenses, itemize income, and find the totals. But if you do have access to an app, like a budgeting app or a tool like the one you just mentioned, those are exceptional because it sort of makes things passive. You're not actively trying to document all those numbers, which can get boring over time. But you have a tool that gives you a snapshot of your finances at any point in time. So paid tools like you need a budget or the ones that some banks do offer, all of those are great. If you don't have access to those, find a spreadsheet, use a paper, just something to document how your money is going in and how it's moving out.
Yeah, keep it simple. Well, one of the first recommendations you create or say to do is to create an emergency fund. Why is that so important?
So once you have your budget in place and you now understand how your money is flowing in and out, the first thing I recommend if you don't have an emergency fund is to create one. So an emergency fund is funds that you can access when you are in a pinch. So if you need access to funds immediately, say you have a car breakdown or you need to pay for something like right away, you don't have to now go to your credit cards and overextend on that, or you won't need to access like a payday loan or anything like that. So an emergency fund gives you some leeway to pay for expenses without overextending, without getting into debt. And experts do advise you keep 3 to 6 months worth of your regular expenses in a savings account that serves as your emergency fund. It can be an exceptional way to avoid taking on debt and getting into that vicious cycle of not being able to pay off your debts, interest rates, and all of that.
Good advice. Then you move on to something called the 50-30-20 rule. Break that down for me.
So 50-30-20 is a budgeting rule that ties in with pretty much learning to budget. So 50% of your income coming in, you can comfortably say, okay, if I spend 50% of my income on needs and I spend 30% of my income on wants, I still have 20% I can allocate to savings, to investments, and if your situation warrants it, to paying off debt. So it's another way of simplifying finances for the everyday Canadian or everyday person is you can take those numbers and just run with them instead of wondering, okay, how do I allocate this? How do I allocate that? It puts you in a box, essentially, saying no more than 50% of your income should go to wants. So, or needs. I have all these needs because people keep on adding on to needs. Oh yeah, I also need that gene. I also need that jewelry. I also need that. Maybe they're just wants. So once you are sort of tied into that box of 50% goes to needs, and then 30% goes to wants. It also limits how much you can allocate to wants just anyhow. And then 20% goes to savings and investing. So it's a rule that helps to sort of formulate a strategy to ensure that you are meeting all the right targets when you have a budget.
Okay, but it's important that you separate needs from wants. And in fact, that's one of your rules. Learn how to separate because jewelry, I would classify as a want. I don't necessarily see as a need, but other people might see that as a need.
Yes. So it's very important to do that right at the beginning when you start to think about budgeting is what are my needs? What are my wants? And needs, in my opinion, the way I define it is what do you actually need to survive, essentially, from day to day. So that's your food, your housing, your transportation. Those I consider to be legitimate needs. When it comes to wants, these are the things that they may help your day-to-day living by making it more comfortable, but you don't necessarily have to survive because of them. Like they are not necessary for your survival. And that could mean additional clothing, more expensive clothing, could mean an expensive vehicle, for example. So beyond what you would need on the lowest basis at the minimum. So anything that extends beyond the minimum could be classified into the wants category. And this doesn't mean that the wants aren't important, which is why the budgeting rule, the 50-30-20 budgeting rule allows you to allocate up to 30% of your income to wants. It's because they're actually important in your keeping you happy and keeping you feeling comfortable. But that said, they aren't as important as the needs.
Yeah.
So being able to separate those is quite important. And like you mentioned, wants and needs can vary for people. So somebody who has a kid may have different needs, and somebody who doesn't have a kid may have different needs. Males and females have different needs and wants in some categories. All of that comes into play.
Yeah, quality of life is what I would put into the want side, whereas the sustaining of life, I guess, would be in the need side, as you've so eloquently broke it down. Your next rule says to use cash instead of credit. This is interesting.
So this rule won't apply to everyone. I think that rule is a on a one-on-one basis type of a rule, in the sense that if you feel you have a predilection to overspending or to using credit and then overextending yourself, spending more than you would normally spend if you were spending cash, this rule comes into play. It can help you better manage your finances, because if you're paying with cash, you feel the pinch right away. Like if I'm paying with my debit card, I'm thinking of, oh, how much do I actually have in my checking account? That nagging feeling is there, is that how much do I actually have in my checking account? And I see the immediate impact in the drawdown of my balance. Whereas with the credit card, I don't have to check the credit card. I just know there's a balance there. I have a $10,000 limit. Yeah, it's easy for me to spend, much more easier for me to spend money. So the way this works is, if you are having challenges with paying off your debt, or you have a credit card balance, using cash can be very helpful in limiting your wasteful expenditures.
Yeah, controlling your expenditures. The next rule has to do with setting goals for yourself. And I got to be honest with you, I sometimes have an issue with people setting goals, because if they don't get to those goals, they can be disappointed.
Yeah, so I see the way I see this a bit different. When I set goals, I set lofty goals, and not reaching those goals means I've actually moved far away from where I was before, even though I did not reach those lofty goals. So setting goals for myself could mean, or setting goals for yourself could mean deciding, you know what, for this year, I'm going to save $10,000 and have it in my investment account. If at the end of the year I'm at $8,000 or 7,500, that's great, because it's very much different from me having $0 in that savings account. So I think setting those goals basically helps you move from point A to point B, or get you from point A to close to point B, which is a departure from where you were initially. So I find it's very great to always set goals and then do your damned best to get to them.
Let me interpret that a little bit differently. So you're focused more on the process than you are on the actual goal.
I think both are very important, but I am not going to hold myself. I won't castigate myself too harshly if I don't reach the final goal, because the goal I set out to initially is often an aspirational one.
Yeah.
Yes. And you can also set small goals if it's easier for you. I think at some point it's almost like a learning process. You set small goals, you reach them, then you increase the threshold. You set even higher goals, you reach them, then you set even loftier goals, and on and on and on. It's how you sort of deal with that throughout your life.
Educate and invest in yourselves. Some people can invest in themselves literally, but not a lot of people can as well.
Yeah, so educating and investing in yourself is actually part of the setting the goals thing, because sometimes you set goals that require you to actually take some certain steps to actually reach them. So, for example, let's say I set a goal that for this year I'm going to start investing, and I'm going to start with my RRSP. Then, of course, that means I want to learn about RRSPs, how they function, how they work, what kind of investments can I hold in my RRSPs, how do I save on taxes with my general investments, how do I save on investment fees. So that's all part of the process in which you have set a goal, and then now is the time for you to educate yourself to actually achieve that goal, or invest in yourself to achieve that goal. Investing in yourself could mean taking a class. It could
I
mean going
see.
back to school. It could mean paying for an online course to learn about, say, investing, for example, or paying for financial advice. Paying a financial advisor is, in a sense, depending on the outcome, could mean investing in yourself, because now you're going to learn through them, and eventually that will trickle down into you increasing your net worth because of the advice and the learnings that you learn from that.
Paying off your debt is next. And with interest rates changing so quickly in the last year or so, I guess that's a really important one these days.
Absolutely. Like if you're carrying a high interest debt, even before thinking about things like investing, I would suggest or recommend paying off that debt, because you aren't likely going to earn enough in returns to to compensate for the interest you're paying on a high interest debt. So a credit card balance, for example, high interest personal loans, payday loans, all of that. Yeah, definitely it's important to to strive to pay off debt as quickly as possible and then think about investing. Of course, I'm not putting in the same category things like mortgages, low interest debt. Those are also great if you can get them out of the way, but I would prioritize paying off high interest debts before even considering investing.
Mm. Learn how taxes work, and taxes are always going to be around, aren't they?
Absolutely. So that ties in with the investing part of the learning process in the sense that if you understand how your taxes work and you're looking for legal ways to minimize them, then investing in, say, your RRSP, which helps you defer your taxes into the future, is a great strategy. Same goes with investing in your TFSA. So maximizing your TFSA, your other registered investment account before moving on to, say, non-registered investment accounts. All of that ties in with understanding the taxation system because you want to do your best as legally possible to also minimize the taxes you are paying over time.
The last one, number 10, is to set yourself up for multiple income streams. And this is an important one because there's a perception that a whole generation, because of COVID, and they got payments through COVID, there's a whole generation that isn't working hard enough. What's your sense of that?
I agree with that sentiment. I think it's a reality, and I have seen it myself. So, uh, I mean, my approach to it is this: if you want to do the minimum and get paid for it, that's one strategy. But if you want to retire, say, earlier, or you want to build up a retirement nest egg that is going to allow you to live comfortably, knowing fully well that the social net, what I forget the right name for it now, but the social net basically or that is available through the government and all of that. It's
Social
in
safety net.
place.
Yes.
Safety net, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's in place and maybe in place in the future, but maybe not. So if you want to actually like prepare yourself for a comfortable retirement that is going to be almost guaranteed, my approach to it is to look for other ways to earn money as well, in addition to maybe your day job. And also just because the economy is what it is, anything can happen. Having those diverse streams of income, I find it's a great way to, first and foremost, put your mind at peace and then also accelerate your ability to save for retirement. In addition to that, is also you just being able to be more flexible in your budget. So we talked about want and need. If you find that your quality of life is easier when you have all the wants that you have on your list, then a multiple sources of income can help you probably afford them, which makes it easy, makes you more comfortable, it makes you happier if that is the case, and then makes it easier for you to save for retirement. So having multiple sources of income means if one drops off, then you still have some ways to pay and fund your lifestyle.
Yeah. All of these, Enoch, are very much common sense, aren't they?
They are.
Amazing. Enoch, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
Enoch Omololu is the founder of SavvyNewCanadians.com.